407 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation,
conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure.
We're met on a great battlefield of that war. We've come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live.
It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground.
The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract.
The world will little know, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us.
that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve these dead shall not have died in vain.
That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom.
And that government of the people,
By the people, for the people.
Shall not perish from the earth.
Iconic, memorable, a part of our fabric as Americans. Lincoln's immortal words uttered nearly unremarkably some 150 years ago, 10 sentences, only 270 words long. The 16th president wasn't even the headliner at the dedication of the National Cemetery at Gettysburg. That was set aside for a popular orator of the day who went on for hours and over 13,000 words, most long forgotten. But not Lincoln's self-written, not even 3-minute earnest tribute to democracy, the intent of the Declaration of Independence, the sacrifice of the dead soldiers, and most enduringly perhaps the issue of human equality, clearly and certainly punctuating what had become his legacy, the freeing of slaves. Abraham Lincoln, while deeply respected for what he did and said right, was amazingly wrong in assuming in his speech that the world will little note nor long remember what we say here. We do remember, and we still revere most every notion. A century and a half later, we remain in awe of the simplistic depth and lasting impact of the words a seriously ill president penned as he prepared for his trip to the grounds where just months before, the largest number of casualties of a war between ideologies, states, and even family members were incurred. If you've never been, a visit to the National Cemetery and Battlefields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania to this day is quite haunting. The aura of the tragedy that is the Civil War, like the words of Abraham Lincoln, which succinctly echo the desperation of the time, endures. Fast forward now 150 years, today. A great deal of reflection on this anniversary of those now celebrated immortal words that describe human self-destruction we'd rather forget. PBS, our partner, has again turned to the esteemed documentary filmmaker Ken Burns to examine the address. That's how we've come to refer to Lincoln's words. So he examines the address through the minds, eyes, and mouths of 10-year-old New Englanders. Perhaps you've seen the film. If not, you ought to. Milwaukee Public Television has also joined in with PBS stations across the country to feature noteworthy local residents, many you know well, as they read Mr. Lincoln's speech to our cameras. It was shot right over there, as a matter of fact. You can see literally hundreds of uploads of similar readings on the MPTV.org website. So today being our annual day that we, the MATC television students at MPTV, take over this station with our own original programming, well, we felt it also quite appropriate to revisit the address, but in a little bit of a different fashion. Whereas 150 years ago in Gettysburg, the president spoke nearly anonymously, not even 3 minutes long, and less than 300 words. Today we can tweet what 40 characters around the world in an instant, where only one picture even exists of Lincoln giving that speech. It said that it was so short, they didn't even have time to set up. Now we can snap an image from our phone and share it to everyone we know in a blink of an eye and spread it across the world. So one has to wonder, what if Abraham Lincoln delivered that speech now? How would it be received, replayed, regurgitated, reviled, respected, remembered? And that's the premise of this program. What exactly is the meaning, the legacy, the lesson of the Gettysburg Address now? Right now, right here in Wisconsin, more specifically, Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Our TV students here at MATC collaborated with residents of the Lake Michigan community and high school students of the 16th President's namesake, Lincoln High in Manitowoc, to examine just that. This is our look at the address.
All right, so you guys are all familiar with what's going on as far as Ken Burns has this new documentary coming out, right? About the Gettysburg Address. So you've all learned the Gettysburg Address, and everyone recited.
Step one for the class was to identify not only the historical meaning of the address, but also its impact on our lives in today's world.
But we don't know. So it's not so much about how it was spoken, but what the words say, right? Okay, so what does it mean?
Okay, so, I don't know, here we have the United States, and they've just gone through this terrible civil war. I mean, we have the famous quote, "A house divided amongst itself cannot stand," from Abraham Lincoln. And this is shortly after Gettysburg. The war is now swung in the favor of the North, and it's looking to become to an end now. And Lincoln's trying to say is, at least in my opinion, is we have this nation that has gone through this terrible war. Many people are dying, most bloody war in American history. And now it's time for a new birth of freedom. We now have the Emancipation Proclamation. We're giving blacks their freedom. The American people need to come together now, North and South. And through this war, through this battle, finally, we're going to have this new birth of freedom, a new United States. We can finally become essentially one again. And this is the way forward now.
But how about other powerful images that bring it out?
About the soldiers holding up the flag in the Iwo.
But there's a Manitowoc connection.
Submarine.
Why, yes, the USS Cobia played a role, didn't it, Logan?
Sank a Japanese vessel carrying tanks to the island of Iwo.
Yeah. 28 tanks were not there, and the Marines said, oh, had they showed up, we would never have won the battle, and that's probably not true, but slight exaggeration. But what's that?
Didn't it receive a medal for that?
It did. Yes, medal citation, presidential citation. They also picked up their prisoner of war who was on his way to dig tunnels on Suribachi. So we have that Manitowoc connection again. So that flag raising is a big thing, and it is about that. And is that the Gettysburg Address speaking?
Yes.
Thank you, Clarice. Definitely. And I'm going to ask you to back that up. So that's good. Yeah. Sure. Because that's what he's talking about, right? I mean, so it's applicable throughout history. But what about today? Do the words still stand? So why don't we come up with some ideas? So I'm going to break into groups of 3 or 4. Sit and think of some ideas to present this in a fashion. And I would say, looking at these kinds of things as images, think about the people, individuals that will be affected by the words.
No doubt the students felt that Lincoln's intent was indeed still significant. The first challenge, how to draft a plan to represent that relevance in the Manitowoc of the here and now.
Said that everybody in the class could all get their own old person.
Yes.
And
We laughed there too. Don't worry.
I paused for laughter. So we use the example as Austin was my old person, and he would say this first part. He'd say, 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. And on me,
You really need that for that part, because I'm pretty sure you did.
yeah,
Okay.
but don't want to get messed up.
Don't mess it up.
Then, me as the young person, I would say this exact same paragraph, but word it in modern day words to show, and the overall message would be that even though we are the younger generation, this still applies to us. But a teenager addicted to their technology can't just read this and understand what it means. So,
And if they brought it into modern day terms now,
people would probably care about it more.
Let's reword it because we can do it better.
We're not trying to do it better. We're trying to make it so that people of this age understand the meaning that it brings for today.
Right. So, we want to find average Americans who are not average at all.
Be more specific, please.
Okay, thank you. We want to find people who are wonderful individuals and are recipients of this message and hold it dear to their hearts.
I'm saying like, but they express the freedom and like the ideas of freedom and how they've been through it and like and how they felt it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, it doesn't have to be just elderly people.
Because they're kind of in the same age as we are.
Yeah, but believe me, that guy who's been over there,
Yeah.
who's 19, and you're
Yeah.
17 or 18 or 16, but when that guy comes back, he is ages older than you.
I'm saying like then they didn't help people.
Right.
So he took it to a different meaning, and now he helps people
And he
with
has
his
phone
freedom.
hot even. Yeah, Tom
Well,
Drills.
That's what I'm saying. I wasn't saying he's that old because I don't know how old he is.
He's older than dirt, but
He's still going.
he's still going. And you know,
And
boom,
everybody-
he was down
and
at
everybody
New
knows
Orleans right away. He went down there to work, and of course gives everywhere here. So I think he would be a great one.
Yeah.
If you can slow him down long enough
Yeah.
Yes.
to talk, because if you've ever been around him, he's whoosh, whoosh, whoosh.
He talks so fast.
Yes, and he remembers you.
He
That's
does.
the other thing.
He
So,
remembered.
before you leave, I would appreciate if you put the desks back in order, and then we'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay? You know your assignments. Okay, good. Reset. Get on your way.
Contrary to popular belief, Abraham Lincoln did not just jot down his musings for what became arguably his most famous and certainly most lasting speech on the back of an envelope. In fact, it is said that there are over a half-dozen versions of the Gettysburg Address in various stages of completion and intended for review by many of the president's most trusted advisors. And just like that approach, so planned the students in Manitowoc. Brainstorming resulted in many ideas, then a more refined production plan began to take shape in their next strategy session.
Well, it's been going okay. They have been trying to find people who will be involved, particularly veterans, and they've been looking to try and get someone, since we built submarines here, trying to get someone from World War II, and that one's been a struggle. Okay. But a lot of them with grandparents and people they think would be significant contributors to the address. So we've got a number of different names and venues that they're heading that direction. And they're pretty excited about it. One student rewrote the address in the vernacular, and we're going to be working with that today.
Cool.
So.
That should be exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
She also has a rap for it, but I don't think we're going to be using that.
Really?
Yeah.
I might have to hear that. At some
Okay.
point. That sounds
Well,
pretty
we have two
Maybe.
students with raps
Yeah.
actually too, so
That's
we'll
awesome.
see.
How do you think the students have reacted?
Well, actually, very excited. Well, certainly they're excited for the entire adventure, but this part, they really took to it, and I was impressed by how they took it to heart. And boy, when we start talking about the emotion involved, and they get to that line, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hollow. I mean, it's powerful, and they get that. And so the project has been going, it's sort of self-perpetuating because of the power of the words that were used.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, good. It's nice to hear some high schoolers taking this to heart. It's kind
Yeah,
of a big deal.
that's the exciting part about education, isn't it?
It's kind of cool to see them react in such a positive way.
Right.
So.
And with April rewriting it, she felt difficult doing it because she said the words are so powerful, so great. How could we beat that? And then we had to point out that's not your role. It was just to make it.
You can't change. It's kind of hard to change Lincoln's words, but because they are so powerful. But you're right. It's kind of cool to give them a chance to really modernize it a little bit and kind of give them a chance to make it their own. You think they're progressing pretty well?
I do, and I think they've gotten the idea. We're going to be looking at the Bixby letter that Lincoln wrote to Mrs. Bixby with the loss of her kids, and to see this put into action a year later. And then I think that will also reinforce the idea of how it's going through that. We're going to continue on with the project today and take a look at some applications of this, and then April's modernification and so on, right? Right. So you have some ideas knocking around on who we're going to pick for this. Basically, what's the message behind the address?
Sorry, am I in your way? So you're trying to rethink. It's sorry, Jackson. I mean, being the expert on the original.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What's the message?
We can't do anything more for the battlefield to honor it than what already happened on it. So, and what he's saying is we should honor it for what it is.
I agree. We can't do anything about this property. This is it. We're here to look at this cemetery that we're dedicating, right? But that's not the message behind the address. The address has very little to do with the battlefield itself. What is the message about? Rebirth of freedom. We're not in the middle of a civil war, tearing us apart. We can't do anything about where we're at. So what can we do?
Try to piece it back together.
Okay. And so, how about we break into groups? Shall we get in groups of, say, 3-ish?
My grandfather, the one that was in Vietnam, he was going to be drafted, but he actually enlisted first because he didn't want to get caught, or like he didn't want to get caught up in the draft and be like, you know, just the recruit in the bottom of the bottom. So he wanted to be like higher up. We could always get him. I'm sure like it doesn't have to be from World War II, and he was in the Navy as well. He was stationed on the USS Hancock.
I think that they would get a better get the message better by reading the modern text, but reading the original one, you don't get the power behind it because of like his wording and everything like that. But with the modern day, they would be able to interpret the message that he was trying to get across better.
So maybe consider bringing it to them side by side.
Mm-hmm.
It's written on the board that we give them like the old version and the questions and how to prepare for it. And then after the answer goes, we give them the new version and see if their answers change and they'll be more involved.
What do you think? How can we get to that point? Get to those points with them? Kate mentioned the scripted aspect, right? What kind of questions? Can we determine the questions differently for each one, or do we give them all the same question? So we will see you then tomorrow. It's time to go.
So are you guys, what's the next step for you guys? Gonna go out and meet these people, interview them, whatnot?
Yeah.
First we have to get permission.
Permission from the people.
Yeah.
Some people may not be too thrilled about being on camera or whatnot.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, that happens.
So it's good that we have a wide variety of options.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I mean, like we were discussing, just going up to them, finding a place that means something to them, and then interviewing them. We're gonna ask them a couple set questions, like we were just talking about, and also, you know, some personalized questions.
Definitely.
And I'm excited to hear their reaction for the modern
Absolutely.
version of it.
Because you made it.
There's that, yeah.
Well, aside from that,
It's the same. It's like it can mean so much different just because it's in modern terms, and even though it's like the same document.
Right.
I'm just really excited to see other people react about what we're doing. I feel like people will be like, wow, this is really cool, great, as kind of said, great opportunity and good experience for us and them if
Absolutely.
they're in it.
Well, it's because it's more than just, you know, it's more than just the document itself. It's the meaning behind it. And I think the fact that all you guys are shedding light, not just on the document itself, but really giving the community and people around you a chance to understand the document in the way it should have been or would have been told today, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool, and I'm excited to see the reaction that you guys get from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am too.
So good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
Work hard and bring back some fantastic news for us.
Hopefully.
Awesome. With the brainstorming evolving into a planning session, evolving again into a production plan, the students followed the lead of Abraham Lincoln. Tweak it until it's right. What they came up with was a production design that basically followed the path that many PBS producers were taking. Have folks reread the Gettysburg Address. But the difference here, do it locally. Subscribe to the words of folks in their own community, people who have made a difference in the Manitowoc area. Then they took it further. What if the address was written, say, now, today? What issues, what concerns, what approach would be most relevant to our lives here and now? And after months of anticipation and weeks of planning, the TV students from here at MATC and Milwaukee Public Television heading up to Manitowoc to actually shoot what the Lincoln High School students had envisioned. Through weeks and weeks of planning, hard work, and preparation, this is the students' version of the new modern address.
"87 years ago, our founders set up the country and decided that everyone should be treated equally. Now we're in the middle of a civil war, seeing if any nation can survive such a test.
Today we're on one battlefield of the Civil War. We are here to dedicate this field to everyone who was in the war and who died here to preserve the nation. If you look at the bigger picture, we cannot do anything to cleanse the battlefield.
Everyone that fought here has already made it as sacred as possible. There is nothing we can do to surpass that. Nobody in the future will remember what we are saying here today, but we will always remember what happened here.
It is because of these soldiers who gave all that we must make it our job to continue their cause. As people of today, we should continue trying to finish what they couldn't, because they fought so hard to get us where we are today. We should continue to honor what they did.
They gave our nation freedom that we didn't have before, and because of this, our government will stand forever.
Using Abraham Lincoln's words, his intent, his hope for the future, the students at Manitowoc's Lincoln High School rewrote history, in a sense, but never changed the meaning, the outcome, or the sentiment intended by the 16th president that day in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, some 150 years ago. They found that after all those years, the president was in fact incorrect. People did long remember what was said and done there on that battlefield, and those words still inspire generations and ring true many generations later.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived, so dedicated, can long endure.
We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We come to dedicate a portion of it as a final resting place for those who died here that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we do this. But in the larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground.
The brave men, living and dead, who struggle here have hallowed it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, while it can never forget what they did here.
That from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave us the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve these dead shall not have died in vain. It is rather for us so living, we here be dedicated to the great task remaining before us.
That the nation shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.